Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, and today I wanted to talk about an upcoming space sci-fi strategy game that caught my eye late last year and quickly became one of my most anticipated games of 2021. Falling Frontier is a very exciting prospect for any fan of hard sci-fi and real-time strategy gaming alike. With its gorgeous visuals, intriguing mechanics, and an upcoming June early access date, I thought now would be a great time to do a deep dive into the game, including information that's already out there, as well as things that I was able to learn after speaking with the developer. There's quite a bit to touch on, and I've tried to make it easy to jump between sections using the timestamps and chapter markers down below, but trust me, it's all very compelling stuff with lots of nifty and surprising details and mechanics in each section, so you're going to want to check it all out. Now, without any more time to waste, let's begin. The setting, the world, its scale, its inspiration. The action in Falling Frontier takes place in space, and while you'll be colonizing, developing, and exploiting planets and moons, the vast majority of the action takes place above and between the celestial bodies across the vast expanse of a far-off star system. You'll be selecting a lineage to determine your home world back in our solar system, and that selection will give you buffs or debuffs based on the backstory of said faction, and you'll also have certain starting technological advances over others. With that selection determined, you're basically left to your own devices to expand across this massive system as you deem necessary. And this is all playable, usable space. Ships are able to travel at sublight speeds through it all, if you so desire, though it will take hours for them to get from one end to another. Instead, you'll want to use their faster-than-light jumps to cover massive distances, though you can only do this at the cost of fuel and with due consideration to gravity wells from celestial bodies. With around 20 different ship types, including civilian ships, frigates, destroyers, cruisers, and battlecruisers, you'll be customizing your weapons options and internal modules and developing efficient flotilla compositions, while also growing an attachment to the admirals and crew who command these ships, needing to sometimes rescue them or watch them perish in the deep quiet of space. As we get to talking about the mechanics in detail, you'll see a lot of hard sci-fi. That is to say, there is a clear focus on scientific accuracy and logic. Naturally, this direction is not taken at the cost of fun, and as a fan of hard sci-fi myself, it is a big part of what drew me to Falling Frontier. I was able to speak with the developer Todd Darcy to get some additional insight into his design ethos and approach, and I was able to get a deeper understanding of how a lot of these systems come together, what we're looking at on screen, and what inspired them to be the way they are. The backstories, setting, and mechanics are all born out of the developer's interest in science fiction lore and world building, as well as a personal interest in the logic and methodology of war, both ancient and modern. Over the many years of development so far, the worlds crafted by the likes of Isaac Asimov, as well as the worlds of Dune, Blade Runner, Aliens, Battlestar Galactica, and the like, have been a source of inspiration, and a military advisor with about 45 years of naval experience, including service time on a submarine, has helped craft a lot of the logistical, lore, and mechanical aspects of what you'll see in the game. And this entire setting and love for the genre is all tied together with the outstanding music by Scott Buckley. Just absolutely amazing soundscapes to conquer the universe to. Check out their YouTube channel if you like what you hear. I've put a link in the description and pinned comment down below. It's some absolutely stellar stuff, and that's not just a pun this time around. Base building. Expand, research, upgrade. As an RTS, you'll need to concern yourself with establishing a base, researching technology to help make it and the rest of your operation more efficient, and ultimately expanding beyond the confines of the nearby area to acquire more resources, which will in turn help you strengthen your position and eliminate the opposition. You'll be colonizing planets as mentioned before, but your engagement with it is through the spaceport orbiting it, a building that acts as the hub and gateway to and from the planet, allowing you to bring up or send back resources, particularly people, something we'll look at more in just a little bit. Beyond the spaceport, you'll have ships responsible for mining asteroids, and the resulting resources can either be brought back to the spaceport, or they can be deposited at supply depots for storage, or they can be sent to refineries for refinement. a process which increases the value of each bit of resource collected, making each round trip by a mining vessel worth more. These resources, refined or not, then need to be moved to various endpoints to either build or repair warships and additional civilian ships, or to produce munitions of various types for the inevitable clashes to come. The transfer of goods can either happen over short distances, but as the resources closest to you run dry, you'll have to start traveling long distances to acquire the needed resources. This, in turn, forces you to establish more supply depots and refineries further and further away, and it also means there are potentially more points at which your enemy can strike you. You'll want to plan your expansion accordingly, and you'll actually want to take into consideration the positioning of your stations as well as where you intend to jump ships to and from because of how vision cones work. Just like radar and radar shadows in the real world, sensor shadows cast by massive celestial bodies make for an excellent hiding spot against specific angles. As one would expect, you cannot see through planets. So how do you hide something in space? Well, you hide it behind a planet, or a moon, or at a smaller scale, behind an asteroid or in a nebula. But being on one side of a planet also means you can't see what's on the other side either, and the closer you are to this body, the worse your cone of vision to see the other side. So, how do you keep your eyes on what's going on? Well, every ship and station will be able to pick up signals up to a certain distance, but you'll also need dedicated recon stations built at positions that give them clear lines of sight. These stations can be set either to keep an eye on a wider angle at a shorter range or a longer range with a narrower beam. These can also operate either in active or passive modes. Passive mode is stealthy, but it's only able to spot energy signatures from jumps that take place within the vision cone, whereas active mode can garner you a lot more information, though it and structures and ships near it become much easier for your enemies to spot. We're only talking about one type of scouting. I haven't even touched on the ability to hide heat signatures by simply camping near a hot celestial body at the risk of the hull slowly weakening and melting away if you get too close. As you can see, you can very quickly start to sprawl, establishing space stations, supply depots, refineries, recon stations, and hiding spots for your ships. To keep all this protected, apart from using stealth options, you'll also want to build static defense structures, turrets and minefields and the like to keep your high-value positions well defended. You'll likely rely on your warships as well, especially when your enemies are mounting a full-fledged offensive, but if you don't know where they're likely to strike and how, positioning your own ships in a way that allows them to respond across your sprawling expanse quickly becomes yet another added challenge. Beyond simply building and defending structures, you'll also be upgrading them to improve their efficiency. An example given is upgrades to recon stations. These upgrades will allow them to identify individual ships in a jump, rather than simply seeing a massive ping where a large number of any ships may have arrived. This gives you more information to work off of, making you overall more efficient. Beyond upgrades made directly to buildings, you'll also spend time and credits researching new technologies. These technologies will unlock new ships, stations, weapons, and ship components, and you'll also be able to research ways to train your crew, ways to colonize new planetary bodies, and additional ways to upgrade your structures. But neither building, nor expanding, nor researching, nor upgrading can happen without a solid economy. And so, Falling Frontier does some very interesting stuff when it comes to that aspect. The economy, resources, and supply chain management. One of the coolest aspects of the Falling Frontier economy is that resources are physicalized and logistics are simulated. You're not just filling up a bar and then getting instant access to resources across your empire. No, resources are physically available only where they are physically located. So you have to ship your various resources from point to point and structure to structure to perform the tasks you need. Need to build a ship at one end of your empire? Well, you better have some ore available at the local shipyard. If not, you're going to have to ship some over, fast. This shipping is done either using generic resource ships that are a bit cheaper to produce and don't need a command crew, or it can be done using ships you build specifically for the task at a higher cost and overhead, but able to carry a much larger capacity at any given time. So, your shipyard cannot make a new ship unless the resources are physically there. Your warships cannot refuel or rearm unless fuel and ammo is physically brought to them, or they travel to a depot that has had fuel and ammo physically brought to it. This creates a supply chain system, and these supply chains can be intercepted. Planets and stations can be blockaded, and each point of these supply chains can be destroyed. This opens the door to piracy and guerrilla warfare, especially useful if you find yourself on the back foot. Did you just lose a major battle but you still have a few ships handy? Quickly scout out and take out enemy supply lines and level the playing field by preventing their ability to produce or resupply fuel and ammo. If they can't shoot, they can't kill you. Keep harassing their supply lines, rebuild your own fleet, keep striking at their economy, and the next thing you know, your enemy's warships can't jump to defense stations or can't shoot back at the next big battle. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Resources are divided into tiers, and the first tier of primary resources consists of fuel, ore, credits, and people. Fuel and ore are mined at asteroid fields or on planets, and then they are either delivered directly to a supply depot for storage, or they can be taken to a refinery to increase their quantity. An example being given is 1 unit of ore being refined to be worth 3 units instead. Naturally, asteroids can be mined out, but so too can planets and other celestial bodies. Coring a planet, or perhaps moon as well, will give you plenty of resources, but bear in mind that will have a direct impact on the gravitational forces generated by the body, presumably from the loss of mass, and this will in turn potentially destroy everything in orbit around it. Credits, meanwhile, are needed for all manner of things. Money makes the world go round, and subsequently the entire solar system as well. But to get credits, you're going to need people paying taxes. People come from people, as one might expect, but reproduction only takes place on planets. Space travel is heavily militarized, and even civilian ships follow military doctrine. Ships don't have artificial gravity, and these ships are more like submarines, super cramped and uncomfortable. Not ideal for baby making or rearing, I would imagine. The dangers and discomforts of space travel also means that people who have taken on jobs in space get a sort of hazard pay. This translates into lower tax rates from those who are in space compared to those who are on planet's surface. They're all generating credits, but to varying degrees. Now, people are needed to operate your stations, and they're the ones who repair any damage. They improve the efficiency of stations as well, and they're also needed on ships to operate them too. The more people on board, the more efficiently they operate. But that's not all. Ships have command crews, and as you can imagine, these commanding officers are recruited from among your population as well. The cost of recruiting a commanding officer, though, is extremely high. The numbers are still being balanced, but as an example, it might take 1,000 people to recruit 1 officer. The implication being the remaining 999 died during the intense training process. This is a harsh and unforgiving universe. So, not only are your people reproducing and generating credits through tax, they're also operating all of your essential services, and they're commanding your ships, providing various buffs and debuffs through traits and perks, and this means that when you lose a ship or station full of people, whether it's in battle or through being picked off in an ambush, your economy is going to take a direct hit, and the overall productivity of your space empire will suffer until you're able to recover from the losses. People actually matter in Falling Frontier. Secondary resources include food and munitions. These are produced at spaceports, supply depots, and shipyards, and they're needed alongside fuel for ships to operate. A ship out there without food for too long will have its crew starve to death, whereas a vessel with weapons but no ammo is not going to be able to fire a single shot. Food will be consumed over time, and ammo will be consumed by firing it, no surprise there. This means that after a battle, you're going to need to resupply your warships, and it also means that any ship that's milling about in deep space for a long period of time will need food delivered to it from time to time. I briefly hinted at this earlier, but an example of when your ship might be floating in deep space for a while is a result of defensive positioning. You want to make sure your ships are placed in a way that they can quickly jump to any one of the multiple points in your zone of control. If the enemy shows up somewhere, you want to get there quickly. Jumps take time, and there's a cooldown between jumps, and even though you have crew members who can use their perks to improve your jump rates and jump distances, you want to make sure that, ideally, you're not arriving after everything is destroyed. So you might try and position your defensive flotilla just 1 jump away from vital positions, and in order to do so, you might have to place said flotilla in the middle of nowhere, occasionally bringing a delivery of food to keep everybody alive. Beyond that, you'll likely want your flotilla to always include supply ships as well, traveling alongside warships so that more ammunition isn't ever too far away, especially in the case of a prolonged series of engagements. Improper management of ammunition has brought entire war machines to a sudden stop in the real world, and the same can happen in Falling Frontier. Now, on the topic of war machines, war in space, from ship customization to battle. Combat in Falling Frontier is very deep, with lots of systems coming together at once, but despite that, it's all meant to be easy to control. As I've already said previously, war and economy are deeply intertwined in Falling Frontier, and at a macro level, we've already touched on the complexities of supply lines and wartime resources and other such concerns. At a micro level, though, we have the engagements between warships themselves. The cost of producing a warship is quite hefty, from the ore needed to build it, to the fuel needed to jump large distances, to the people needed to crew it, and the hefty human cost of training officers, all the way to the cost of producing and delivering munitions to keep it functional. As you can expect, this hefty cost reflects directly onto the scale of battle. Falling Frontier is not about spamming hundreds of ships. It's not about massive fleets engaging with not a care for losses. It's about careful engagements between flotillas led by admirals. These are groups of 4 or 5 ships, and the admirals themselves are actual characters that can be leveled up and can die in the field as well, just like the commanding officers aboard each ship and the unnamed crew on each as well. This makes combat an intimate, precise, and tense affair where every little detail matters. Warships can be of different classes: frigates, destroyers, cruisers, and battlecruisers. As you can imagine, these classes serve different purposes, but it's important to note that bigger isn't necessarily always better. Different chassis have different numbers of internal components that can be swapped around: mine layers, escape pods, extra armor, etc., etc. And they also have a different number of hardpoints, and each hardpoint can be of a different size and type. Larger turrets and missile pods might cause more damage, but they'll be slower to rotate and engage fast-moving targets. Watch as these 2 frigates fire away at the slowly turning destroyer. They're able to engage from a safe distance, getting early shots in before the destroyer can even begin to respond. Despite the size of these battles, there's still plenty to manage. Asteroids can be used to hide behind, rendering a ship either invisible or safe from being hit. Individual hardpoints can be told what to fire upon to optimize the use of different ammo types and damage output. Range management can give one side an edge over another. Firing from a distance might lead to inaccuracy and ricochets off enemy hulls, but hardpoints that are slow to rotate will have trouble keeping up with ships moving quickly at a close distance. And every shot matters. Not only because ammunition needs to be replenished using your supply lines, but also because each projectile is physicalized. You'll need to take into consideration the flight path of each shot, as a flubbed round might destroy an asteroid or hit an unintended target. And this physicalization goes beyond hitting and missing. Each ship has subsystems, and as shots make contact, what they hit actually matters. Choosing your angle of attack can make all the difference in the world. Taking out engines or thrusters can prevent a ship from moving or otherwise escaping using its jump capabilities. This might allow you to salvage it for parts or tug it back to your own shipyard to repair and commandeer it. Hitting the munition storage, meanwhile, might be extremely unlikely, but it will instantly destroy the targeted ship as all the ammo within explodes. A lucky shot from you or your enemies can quickly turn the tide of battle, and this feeling of dread and tension is something Falling Frontier constantly wants to push. As expressed just moments ago, when a battle is done, wrecked ships can either be salvaged or tugged back for refitting, repairing, and reassigning. But the people don't just disappear either. The aforementioned escape pods allows crew to escape. They can either be rescued or captured and interrogated, or left to die as they float through space, with their food slowly running out. You'll likely want to rescue high-value officers who have leveled up or have lucrative skills, but an ambush might be waiting. Interrogating enemy officers, meanwhile, grants intel, ship locations, space station locations, specific ship loadouts, and more information that you can use to prepare yourself. Damaged ships that survive an engagement can be repaired, but only up to a percentage of their HP while out and about, and they'll need to return to a shipyard for a full repair, taking up a construction slot, taking time to travel and repair, and taking resources. Even when you win, a battle can hurt. Every decision becomes a matter of balance. Risk versus reward, choice and consequence. One of the core elements of the design ethos here is the idea of risk and reward, and the balance between the choices you make and the consequences that come out of them. This mindset is applied everywhere possible, making each decision that much more important. As discussed earlier, things are expensive, but this applies in more than one way, and the best way to explain this design philosophy is through some examples. Let's say you've just finished researching and upgrading a weapon type, and you want to make sure to swap your ships over to using this new and upgraded weapon. It's not a matter of simply selecting a ship, no matter where it is, clicking the upgrade button, and then waiting 60 in-game seconds. No, you need to physically bring that ship to a shipyard. If the ship is in the middle of nowhere, it has to make a jump. That jump might be spotted, giving away your position. Spotted or not, the jump costs fuel. Now you float over to the shipyard and dock, slowly, because docking takes time, it's a dangerous maneuver. And then you make the upgrade, using the ore that you've shipped here from somewhere in the system. This also proceeds slowly, because maintenance takes time. And then your ship undocks. And then you have to decide whether you want to jump back to where it was or not, because, yet again, if that jump signature is spotted, you could be in a world of trouble. That's a lot of risk, but it could give you the technological edge in upcoming battles for quite a while. But if you feel like it's too risky, don't do it. Let's say you've had a recon station pointing in a certain direction with absolutely no luck. It's just sitting there, looking pretty. Or maybe you just barely caught something and want to change your wide, short beam into a long, narrow beam where you're pretty confident more intel awaits you. It's easy enough to send the command to the station, but they need to power down their sensors and then use their thrusters to rotate accordingly, adjusting their angle and then turning their sensors back on. What might you miss in that brief period of sensor blindness? Another interesting example provided was with regards to building a ship without anything attached to its hardpoints. The case where a shipyard is likely going to be destroyed, and you don't have enough resources to make a fully operational warship. You might just opt instead to make a weaponless ship to drain the last few resources from the doomed shipyard. If you're lucky, you'll be able to jump away with this ship. If you're unlucky, the station might be destroyed, losing you all the resources, or your defenseless ship might be destroyed just after being built, costing you not just the resources and people, but potentially forcing your hand to rescue the crew, and potentially exposing your positions should they get captured and interrogated. These are just a few examples of how Falling Frontier is pushing the idea of choice and consequence and risk and reward into multiple layers with different levels of complexity. I'm going to go off script here for a minute because I can't hold my excitement in. How cool does all this sound? And what's wild is these systems are in place right now. These aren't wild dreams. They're not strange ideas that would be nice to have. These ideas are active in the game right now as it leads up to early access. This kind of concept, this kind of approach to sci-fi is something I've always been a huge fan of. I've always loved seeing the real limitations of war, the real limitations of, physics and science and the world be utilized to make fun or tense gaming moments, and that seems to be a big part of what Falling Frontier is trying to do. Just thinking about how turning your sensors off and on in the deep blackness of space and it resulting in a surprise attack, that kind of stuff gets me really excited, and I'm so pumped to see how these things come together. Now again, I want to stress that a lot of these things of course are fluid. There's a lot of balancing going on, there's a lot of adjusting going on. That's the nature of development. But to even have these ideas operational to a degree and to see them in action and to see that type of thinking, I just it's awesome. It's got me so pumped. Now, as I was saying, development is fluid, things change over time, so let's take a moment to talk about the development plan. The game has been in development for a long time now, starting as a second full-time gig, and then around April or May of 2019, becoming the full-time gig of our solo developer, Todd Darcy. It'll be releasing into early access June of this year, and I am thoroughly excited for it based on the plans I've heard for the near and far future, and based on the clear level of dedication for the project. With a launch plan that includes 20 ship types, including civilian and warships, we're going to see a great variety on the battlefields as ship customization pairs with the various chassis types to create unique weapons for unique uses. At the start of early access, we'll be seeing a skirmish mode against the AI in a pre-built system, but there are plans to see this potentially expand into campaigns if there is sufficient interest in the game, and the procedural generation of larger and larger star systems is very much on the table as well, outside of just the single-player campaign modes. There are some very intriguing plans to potentially add a dynamic objective system that gives the player some ideas as to what they might want to pursue based on the information available to them, like chasing down a fuel resupply ship, intercepting enemy flotillas, etc., etc. The whole idea being there's so many options, in my opinion at least, it'll be nice for the game to let you know, hey, have you thought about this idea that no other space sci-fi game would ever let you do? You can do it here. Now, on talking with the developer, it's very clear that he has big dreams for this project. Keeping in mind the, again, fluid nature of game development, he's got plans to develop it for a long time if there's player interest, and it's very evident that the project is being driven by a genuine passion. The game is already looking absolutely fantastic, visually, technically, and mechanically, and early access is still quite a few months away, so I can only imagine how much better it'll be between now and then. If you want to show your support to the developer, check out the YouTube channel and Discord I've linked in the description down below, and please consider wishlisting the game on Steam. He isn't kickstarting, he's not going on Patreon, none of that. So wishlisting on Steam, subscribing to the YouTube channel, spreading the word are all great ways to help. I wear my heart on my sleeve about this stuff. I'm very, very excited for this game, and I'll be covering it tons on the channel. This kind of stuff is super cool to me. It's the kind of sci-fi space game I dream of playing, and it's great to see a developer be genuinely excited about every aspect of the process. He's super active on the Falling Frontier Discord, constantly responding to questions, showcasing examples, and sharing development updates. And while the Steam page is a little light on details, the YouTube page is very revealing, showing steady progress and some extremely interesting mechanics in action. As I mentioned earlier as well, if you like the absolutely beautiful soundscapes you've been hearing, make sure to check out Scott Buckley's YouTube channel as well, also linked in the description down below. He's making the music for the game and often live streams his production process for its tracks as well as other stuff he's working on. Mark your calendars. June 2021, an absolute game changer of a sci-fi RTS is about to release into early access with some big plans and the drive and capability to accomplish them. Please check it out, wishlist it on Steam, follow the developer's YouTube channel, show the support that this kind of massive undertaking, in my humble opinion, deserves. I hope this video has given you some insight into Falling Frontier. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be covering it a lot on this channel, so if you're interested in keeping up with development, consider subscribing here too. I focus on strategy, simulation, and management gaming primarily, so again, make sure to subscribe for previews, reviews, let's plays, and more on those types of genres. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who have been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big old thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Till next time, cheers.